another one of the questions, Matt, around multiple E3 visas. So I understand broadly that you can have more than one active concurrent E3 visa. A, is that true? And B, like, what is the process for if you want to do more than one visa at a time?
Yeah, it's a great question, and not something that people kind of really think about. You can only have one status at the same time, so you can't be here in an E3 and an O1, for example. But you can have a concurrent E3 where you're here in the E3 status, and you're either having two part-time E3s or a full and a part-time. You can't have two different full-time E3s. But that's sort of what the process is. And then when you go and you're going through the process of applying, you're just doing two full applications. So there are other sort of strategic considerations, that are fact specific to your own specific situation, because you kind of want the jobs to be similar. I mean, at least that's what we recommend, as closely similar as possible. Because you're kind of making a kick, because they're sitting there looking at both applications at the same time. And, if you're going to use these drastically different occupational categories, there might be some strategic downside to that setup, but that's sort of what it's like. And you need your wage, to clear the minimum prevailing wage.
For each of them, right?
On each application.
Yeah. So it's sort of take a gut check. Like if you told someone, hey, I've got two full-time jobs in two unrelated things, and I want two visas to do them both, you kind of got to think, how does that look to someone? Surely you can't do that.
You can only have a full and a part. What we see most often is, we've done this a lot with two part-time jobs, where somebody's essentially doing the same job just for two companies. That we see that every so often. The other situation where we see this come up is somebody that's here in your sort of traditional E3, and then their secondary part-time job is a little bit more in the more of a startup. Maybe it's not the kind of thing that you would really want as your primary E3, but the fact that it's a secondary part-time E3, we see them. It's almost like they scrutinize it a little bit less than if it were its own standalone E3 application, because you don't have the same kind of considerations, especially if you're living in a high cost of living area. If all you have is a, part-time 10, 15 hour a week E3, you're living in LA or New York. I mean, they're going to kind of say, well, how are you going to, get by? But
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that they have to be applied at the same time. So you should be walking in applying for both E3s at the same time, not walking in, or you can sometimes go in and say, I've already got a full-time, but I've been offered a part-time job in addition to.
Yeah, you can do it. You can not, you can do it so that it's like you said, you can do it at a later time. If it's a part-time concurrent E3, then you kind of have a couple different dates that you have to keep in mind, work authorizations and things like that. It's a lot cleaner to do it all at once. But yeah, so if you have a job, you're on an E3 and you want to just go get a concurrent secondary E3, you can do that. Again, because of how short the E3 period is, if you've already kind of gone into the second year of your sort of primary E3, I would say just do a whole new one, because you're already going through the appointment process and taking all these steps. It's just easier and cleaner to get it so that they're both, for the same 2-year period. And that's what we recommend.
Yeah. I actually had someone yesterday get in touch because they thought they were applying for the secondary concurrent one and they got approved. And what they actually, when they got their passport back, their visa, their initial or primary E3 said cancelled without prejudice. So that meant that one was no longer valid. When you apply for a concurrent one, when do you flag that it's and I realize this is not the sort of recommended process, but just in case somebody is applying for a secondary one right after getting their first one, but in a separate appointment, do you have to get a separate appointment? Do you have to do a different process from a normal one, or do you just tell them at the desk when you're going through your appointment, hey, this is a concurrent one?
Reflected in the LCA.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's, like you said, there's kind of the way that it can be done, and then there's the angle from what are these officers really thinking? What are they looking at?
Yeah.
How are they going to treat this situation? because they make mistakes or maybe they interpret things differently. I would say in all but like very limited situations, I would say do it at the same time. Because again, the other thing to keep in mind is now that your primary E3 is being sort of accompanied by this concurrent E3, in a way, they are both concurrent. Like there isn't really a primary any longer. So when we do it, we really only do it where you're both doing it at the same time. If you're doing it from within the US and you're not doing it through consular processing, it might be a little bit easier. I mean, that's sort of where we've primarily done this secondary concurrent one with the existing E3, because you're already there, you got your stamp. You're not, seeking to be admitted in a specific E3 status for a specific employer because you're already there. So you go through the US CIS. It's a bit of a different process and a little more straightforward. If you're going to do the consular application, though, I would say do them both at the same time.